Welcome, Isabel, for today's presentation on the Holistic Health Alliance platform. Thank you for giving your time and your um, training and your expertise for sharing it with the Holistic Health Alliance community. And for anyone else who's watching the video later on or attending right now, Holistic Health Alliance is a 501c3 nonprofit, nationally launched, and our tagline says building healthy communities, and that's what we focus on. It's a completely community dedicated nonprofit where we try to educate the community about what are some of the non-pharmaceutical, non-chemical health resources that one can use instead of popping a pill every time. And a lot of holistic practices talk about primary prevention of how to live life in a way that we don't fall sick. So, Holistic Health Alliance brings together all of the holistic modalities on a single unified platform nationally. And we also have a youth brigade where we are dedicated to developing empowered youth health leaders. So please check us out on www.holistichealthalliance.org. And holistic starts with a W, and W is there for a reason. W stands for we. So basically, we are inclusive and unified rather than excluding, certain modalities, including modern medicine. So there is a time and place for that too. So once again, the website is www.holistichealthalliance.org. We are also on Instagram by the same name, and we are also on Facebook by the same name. Please do check us out. And if you are a holistic practitioner who is listening in, please join your tribe, please join your practitioner community and be nourished, be informed, be supported by other fellow holistic practitioners and enjoy the feeling of community. So with that, I'm going to introduce today's lovely speaker, Isabel. We are really excited to have you, Isabel, because homeopathy is an amazing holistic modality. My own mother was a homeopath, so I certainly have grown using homeopathic remedies, and I totally believe in them. The modern way of evidence can come when it comes and in whatever way it comes. But I'm sitting here, I have seen hundreds of people healed through my mother, some coming, with crying babies and acute condition and still benefiting in those acute conditions as well. So I'm a first-hand, person who has experienced homeopathy and its benefits firsthand. So I'm really delighted, first of all, to have you in our group, in our Holistic Health Alliance platform. And I'm very thankful that you have agreed to my invitation to give a talk, which will introduce principles and approach of homeopathy for the layperson, because often holistic area tends to be perceived as a monolithic entity, like everything is clubbed under one. People often are not informed enough that there is a difference between homeopathy, naturopathy, Ayurveda. Sometimes they all get pooled under one umbrella. So it's going to be very, very, very helpful, I think, for people to understand that the principles are very, very different. The land of origin of homeopathy, which is Germany, is completely different from Ayurveda, for example, which is India. Their length of history is different. Their principles, their approach are completely different. And yet it's a different framework, but it works. So excited to listen to you. So I'm going to introduce you now. So Isabel Frankel, CCH, is a nationally certified homeopath and a 2014 graduate of the Teleosis Homeopathic Collaborative. In addition to her independent practice, she volunteers her homeopathic services at the Association of Haitian Women in Boston and Animas Laser Therapy in Durango. In 2017, she traveled to Haiti to mentor Haitian medical professionals in the practice of homeopathy. She continues to deepen her knowledge of homeopathy by studying with masters all over the world and has added gemotherapy to her offerings. One of her favorite professional activities is conducting workshops on the history and benefits of homeopathy for the uninitiated. She earned a Bachelor of Science degree in mathematics and psychology at McGill University in Montreal and a master's degree in education at Boston University. She has taught mathematics in Puerto Rico, Boston, and Cambridge. Ms. Frankel is a level 3 Reiki master, a martial arts practitioner, plays jazz flute, and is fluent in both Spanish and Haitian Creole. And she's the proud mother of 2 Haitian American adult children. Wow. All right. What's next, Isabel?
Oh, God. Thank you so much. That was very sweet, and
Please.
I'm honored to be here. And I want to greet Lena, who's joining us today. Hi, Lena.
All right. People are mostly in
Okay,
listening mode, I guess. So
that's
go ahead,
fine.
Isabel.
So I'm going to
This,
do the share screen thing here
yes.
and get my PowerPoint up here and go back to the beginning.
Perfect.
Let me go back here. Okay.
So I'll go on mute and I might be off video for a short while, but I'm here.
Okay. Great. Thank you. So this is, as Pratibha very eloquently said, this is an introduction to homeopathy, and it is under the umbrella of holistic medicine. I'm just noticing here in the slide that it's spelled with an H. I think I'll add the W. I like that we. I think it's very, very much part of what we all do. So thank you again for inviting me to speak today, and I'm very proud to be part of the Wholistic Health Alliance. So this is the agenda for today. If Alina, at any point you want to just come in and introduce yourself, you're welcome to do that. And if not, we're going to go through the agenda, starting with a little history and then talk about different aspects of homeopathy. Pratibha mentioned a little bit about how homeopathy is different from other holistic modalities, and that will be part of what we talk about today for sure. So let's begin with some history. And I just want to adjust my screen here a little bit. Okay. So homeopathy, the word homeopathy is a good place to start. Homoios is similar, Greek, and pathos is suffering. And so literally, if we translate similar suffering, and that's where the word homeopathy comes from, and that is not actually from 200 years ago. The idea of using similar suffering as a way of medicine goes back thousands of years to the 4th century BC. Hippocrates mentioned the law of similars. So Samuel Hahnemann, German doctor, he developed it into the medicine that we call homeopathy, but the idea was around for many thousands of years before he actually used it. So again, Hahnemann is our famous predecessor, and we refer to him a lot. And when you go through the study of homeopathy in Homeopathic College, we read a lot of Hahnemann's works, the original work called the Organon, which has been republished many times. So we're talking about, over 200 years ago that this was first developed. And so the law of similars is the fundamental law upon which homeopathy is based. And literally, if I can pronounce this well, similia similibus curantur, like is cured by like. So literally, what a substance can cause, it can cure. So a very simple example would be if you're peeling an onion and you develop tears and your eyes are burning, and those are all the symptoms that you might develop when you get very close to an onion. So those types of symptoms might also occur when you have an allergy, right? Your eyes could burn, they could tear, And so we create a remedy from the red onion in the homeopathic form, which we will talk about a little bit in this presentation, and that can actually cure those same symptoms. So again, what a substance can cause in a healthy person, it can cause in a person that's presenting those symptoms during an illness. So Hahnemann, very interesting guy. He was a doctor at that time. He was a medical doctor, went to medical school, was a scientist, very curious man, and definitely not afraid of speaking his mind. So his very first experiment, which was back in the 1750s or so, no, actually 1760s or 70s, and because he was very disenfranchised with the way medicine was practiced at that time, there were lots of methods that today we would consider downright dangerous, like a lot of bloodletting and a lot of purgatives, giving high doses of things which cause people to vomit and just release a lot of toxins, but could basically kill you. So he just didn't want any part of that type of medicine. So to support himself, he ended up translating a lot of medical texts, and he came across a document talking about how the cinchona bark, which is the Peruvian bark from a tree in Peru, was used to treat malaria. So he started, because he was very curious, he started experimenting on himself, giving himself pretty big doses of this medicine, of this substance. And he developed these symptoms: fever, thirst, drowsiness, heart palpitations, anxiety, muscle and joint pain. And then he started experimenting in using very small doses of that potencies. And we'll talk a little bit about how that's prepared. But that today, over 200 years later, is now a homeopathic remedy called China Officinalis. And it is actually a remedy that's used for exhaustion, weakness, anemia, intermittent fever, because at that time it was used to treat malaria, and a lot of the symptoms that people show in a malaria state is this intermittent fever, along with headache, along with weakness, and especially weakness that comes from diarrhea or vomiting, any kind of violent discharge of vital fluids from the body. Okay. Okay, so let me go to the next slide here. Okay. Okay, why is this not? Okay, there we go. So in Hahnemann's time, believe it or not, he started experimenting with a lot of different types of remedies that were made from natural substances. During his time, by the time he died in I think it was 1843 that he passed, he actually had proven about 100 remedies. Okay, and so even during the time he was living, which was 1813, 1799, and cholera as well, he was able to work with some of the epidemics at that time. And it's astounding some of the rates, the death rates of the allopathic doctors compared to the death rates for the homeopaths using homeopathy to treat some of these epidemics. So these are just some of the quick statistics here. And this is for the cholera. Okay, this is specifically for cholera. So you can see, for example, in 1854, death rate of homeopathy, 9%. Death rate using allopathy was 59%. So we definitely have a very long success rate using homeopathy to treat epidemics. And there's actually a whole book about the flu. So Spanish flu has its own attention, and how it's just amazing when you look at the history, how well homeopaths were able to treat people during the time of the Spanish flu. This is just not something that's it's just not well known, but the information is there and it definitely exists. Okay. So he continued, as I said, he continued with substances, natural substances, experimenting until he died at the age of 88. And again, he conducted or supervised provings of 100 substances. So a proving is when you prepare a homeopathic remedy from a natural substance and you give that remedy to healthy people. Okay, it's kind of the opposite of what we do in allopathic medicine. We tend to give the medicines to the sick people. Well, in homeopathy, to prove a remedy, we give the medicines to healthy people, and then we keep track of the symptoms that come as a result of taking these remedies. And then over time, we compile that information, and those list of symptoms could then be used for people that are ill and present those symptoms. So again, like cures like. By the end of the century, so we're talking by the end of the 1800s, by the end of the 1900s, the end of the 1800s, we had more than 600 medicines that were proven. Today, as of 2020, there are over 8,660 remedies, and I think the number is continuously growing. So again, leaps and bounds from the time of Hahnemann to today. So how the medicines are created is very interesting because that also is changing as we speak. Originally, from the time of Hahnemann, remedies were made from plants, from animals, and mostly from minerals. Okay, mostly those three types of situations. And the way that they are created depends on the source of the material. So if it's a plant, the plant could be soaked in an alcohol solution over a period of time, and then we get from that, we call the mother tincture. And then I'll talk a little bit more about how that's prepared. If it's something that comes from, let's say, a mineral that can't be put in liquid, you take a part of that mineral, and then you see the picture of the mortar and pestle there. We actually grind that along with some lactose, and then we put that from there, it gets into the liquid form after that. So there are different ways of producing the remedy depending on where the remedy comes from in nature. Okay, so it's really important that when we do those preparations, we are diluting, but we're also doing this, what we call this process of succussion, which is this shaking or pounding, because that's where homeopathy really is different from a lot of other remedies. You prepare the remedy in such a way that you keep diluting it and you keep potentizing it, bringing it up to a higher level. Okay. So there are different types of potencies in homeopathy. We have the 1-to-10 ratio, which means you would take, let's say, 1 drop of the substance, and you would dilute it with, let's say, 9 drops of water or alcohol. There are some remedies that can be made exclusively with water, but normally they're made with water and or alcohol. So you would take that 1-to-10 ratio, and then you would succuss it about 100 times, and then you take 1 drop from that, and then the same thing, 10, and then succuss it 100 times, and you just keep doing that over and over and over again. And so if you have a 3x potency, what that means is that you've diluted it 10, 10, 10, and succussed it 100 times each in between. So again, it's diluted again and again and again and again to a point where you're actually not seeing the molecules of the substance anymore. So by the time you get to a 12C or a 24X, at that point you're passing from the material over to the purely energetic form. And we also have the 1-to-100 ratio. In fact, those are probably the most common ones that you see in the health food store. Mostly you'll see a 30C potency. So again, that just tells you how many times it's been diluted. And again, every time it's been diluted, it's being shaken or succussed 100 times as well. Okay. And the dosing, it really is dependent upon what's going on for the person. So if you are In an acute situation, let's say you have the flu, let's say you have a cold, let's say you fell off your bicycle, those are all types of acute situations. You could repeat frequently. You could repeat every hour, every 15 minutes. It really depends on what's going on in the acute situation. And normally, if it's acute and you're dosing like in that kind of situation, you're going to see the effects pretty quickly. In fact, if you don't see the effects fairly quickly over a 24-hour period, that would be an indication that you would probably want to change the remedy. Okay, and we're going to talk a little bit later about treating at home with a home remedy kit or even using a home remedy guide. And it's very safe to do that. You can see that these remedies are available in the health food store, at least in a 30C, and the more common remedies are available in the health food store. Not all 6,000 remedies are available in the health food store, but the ones that are kind of the commonly used ones are available, and it's safe to experiment on yourself with those for sure. If you're looking at a chronic situation, and I would highly advise if you are in a chronic situation, you probably want to work with a professional homeopath. And that type of dosing is repeated in a lot of different ways. You probably won't be repeating it like you do with acute. You're not going to do 4 or 5 doses in a day. You might do it weekly, you might do it every 2 weeks, you might even do it every few months. And that's something, that protocol you'd be working out with your professional homeopath, because it all depends on how you respond to the remedy. These are all very individual. So I wanted to read a little bit from this quote, because I think it really speaks to the wholeness here that we're talking about. I'm just trying to move this down here so I can see this. Okay. So this is from the Tao of Homeopathy by Ian Watson. And he is a very famous British homeopath who not just practices homeopathy in the way many of us do, but he also thinks about it on a very spiritual level too, because this whole level of interconnectedness is part of what we do as homeopaths. Everything is interconnected. The homeopath does not attempt to separate body from mind or the patient from his suffering. She respects the underlying order, even when all she can see is the chaos on the surface. When the cat's tail gets trampled, it is the mouth that yelps. The moon, though 10,000 miles away, pulls the earth's tide as if on a string. A mother knows her own baby's cry even amongst a room full of crying babies. No symptom, no disease, no person can exist in isolation. To treat things as if they were separate from each other is to start from a false premise. So in the homeopathic system, we look at the whole person. We don't look at your individual parts. And there's the wholeness. There's that piece of wholeness again speaking to us. So as an example, if a person comes in and starts sharing how they've had this really bad pain in their lower back, and the homeopath might ask, so when did this pain begin? Well, it actually started about 5 years ago. Okay, so what was happening 5 years ago? Well, that's the time that I lost my mother. Okay, and then we would go through that experience with the client and talk a little bit about what it was like during that time. And so the back pain is not just the pain in the back. It's a wholeness in the person that's showing in every aspect, in every part of their body. And so when a person is suffering, when a person is not feeling well, it's it's part of their vital force. It's part of their system that's been disrupted. And so that could affect, for some people, could be the pain in the back. Maybe somebody else who has lost their mother might get frequent headaches, or might get a pain in their stomach, or develop symptoms of indigestion. So each person may have experienced the loss of the mother, but doesn't show it. The body doesn't show it in the same way, doesn't put it off in the same way. And so as homeopaths, we would look at that difference in each person and how they portray that disbalance in their system. And that's one of the things that does put us apart from allopathic medicine as well. So back in time, let's say you go to the doctor with your lower back pain, and you might be given a prescription that will just address that lower back pain. And maybe the back pain would actually go away, but the underlying condition of feeling just not quite right because of the loss of the mother is still there. So maybe the back pain would go away, and maybe another pain would come up on a deeper level. So that's a form of suppression. So you're not really getting to the source of the problem. So back to that person that's talking about losing the loss of the mother and the back pain, and then we would go into some other conversations around the back pain and try to find a remedy that fits all of those aspects of the person, the grief, the back pain, maybe some other pains that are going on in the body, how they are as a person, what type of desires they have in terms of food. There's a wholeness about each person that we can, as homeopaths, tune into on a lot of different levels. And then that remedy that we prescribe for that person would be the remedy that would help the person's back pain and help the person work through the grief and anything else that comes along. So it's very holistic in that respect, in that you're treating the whole person. You're not treating the disease. You're treating what the person is expressing in that force. We call it vital force. Some people could call it their prana or chi or ki in a lot of different languages, but it's basically the same idea. And so many doctors actually are homeopaths. And as we said in the very beginning, the developer of homeopathy was an MD. Samuel Hahnemann was an MD. And many homeopaths were MDs, mostly MDs, until most recently. And now many homeopaths are lay homeopaths, as myself. And there is one of our dear teachers, Will Taylor, who's a medical doctor and a homeopath out in the West Coast, and the teacher of many of the courses I've taken. We see disease as the disattunement of the dynamis, again, that vital force, which will show up in the person not merely in one locale, but may manifest in diverse manners that may not seem to be related to each other from the perspective of reductionist pathology. Okay, so again, we're talking about the back pain related to the loss of the mother 5 years ago. We don't necessarily make those connections. As such, a person presenting with athlete's foot or a GERD symptom and a headache may have 3 diseases according to allopathic nosology. So, right, you go in for these 3 different things and you get 3 different medicines, right? Many of us have that experience. Or back to that person that lost the mother, maybe they're given an antidepressant, and then they're given something for their back pain. So those symptoms are looked at, or those situations are looked at as completely separate and not connected. But for us, homeopaths, there is likely one disease of the person manifesting simultaneously in these 3 diverse superficial expressions. Homeopathy addresses the individual case of disease as it manifests diversely in the whole person, rather than pathologically defined diseases as things in themselves. So we are not treating the disease, we are treating the person. That's a very big difference. So it is a natural holistic therapy, and again, made from mainly those sources, plants, animals, minerals. It stimulates the body's own ability to heal, whereas allopathy works directly on the physical body. So your whole body is involved. I'll give you an example. Let's say that same person that has the back pain takes the remedy that the homeopath feels resonates well with that particular situation. So the person taking the remedy may not actually notice at first that the back is better. Maybe at first the person has a deeper sleep that night, or has very interesting dreams, or sleeps a lot longer and feels the next day more restful and more energetic. And people around that person might notice that there's a little shift in terms of how the person is feeling. Maybe their irritability is down, maybe their patience is better, and then maybe over a couple of days they do start to notice a difference in the pain in their back. So again, that holistic approach, the whole body, every aspect of you, your mental, your emotional, your physical, is involved in this healing. And we take into consideration all of your relevant symptoms, which is why when you're seeing a professional homeopath, it's not going to be 5 minutes. It's going to be probably 90 minutes to even 2-3 hours with some homeopaths, because we really would like to get to know you on all these different levels and get this information to help us choose the right remedy, or in some cases, remedies for your healing. And homeopathy, we don't deal with side effects, and so we can very with confidence say that they are safe and effective. Safe and effective, because even if you're, let's say, even if you are taking a remedy that's created from a substance that in material form is toxic, when it goes through that whole process of dilution so many times, we talked about this a little bit before, and you're actually not seeing the material dose, it doesn't matter. If you even take arsenic as a homeopathic remedy, arsenicum, which is sold in the health food store, you're not getting the material substance, so you're not going to be poisoned. Quite the opposite, it's going to be very healing. Okay. And this list is certainly doesn't say it all, because it's just so effective for so many conditions, from the mental, emotional, digestion issues, headaches, injury, insomnia, respiratory issues, skin issues, and the list just goes on and on and on. So I was hoping to show you this video, but it doesn't work from my end to share this video, but the link will be shared with you, and I do encourage you to watch it. It's a 4-minute video, and it's put out by the Homeopathy Research Institute, which is based in Europe, in the UK. And what's beautiful about this institute is that they have these PhD physicists doing all this research work. So it's like, okay, I drive my car. Do I really need to know how the engine works? Because we're asked in so many different ways. So how does homeopathy really work? Well, thank God we have these research scientists working on this, because there are theories out there, but that's the nature of this research. They look into how they work. They look into what homeopathy can treat. And again, and they try to go into what could possibly be for the future. So in this 4-minute video, they introduce you to a couple of different researchers. One lady is from Brazil, another one from Germany. There's a French physicist who is one of the directors of the institute. So I really encourage you to check it out. It's quite high level and quite sophisticated, and some of the research on the nanoparticles and the nanostructures I say, yeah, okay, I'm going to leave that to the PhD physicists. But there are some theories out there that when the dilutions and succussions take place, that there's some type of an energetic substance that's released into the water. And somehow, and again, this is being studied, somehow that has a healing effect on different parts of the body. So the most recent research that I've seen is the epigenetic research. There's a homeopath, naturopathic doctor in Canada named John Millar, who has shown us a lot of research in the epigenetics field. And there's now become this very strong connection between homeopathy and epigenetics. And they're trying to explain why is it that certain remedies, for example, if you put them on a petri dish with cancer cells, that these homeopathic remedies that are highly diluted actually kill these cancer cells. And so these are lovely pieces of research I'd be happy to share with you if you are so inclined to look at them. But when people say there's no research, oh, that is just not true. There is so much research out there. Okay, let me go to the next slide here. So I wanted to also point out that there are some wonderful practical guides. So for example, if you would like, this book here, Homeopathic Medicines, Everybody's Guide. I've had that for many years. It looks quite dated, the copy that I have, but it's great because these are the types of books that you can just get for yourself. And a lot of the remedies that are put out in these books are available in the health food stores. So the one for children and infants, I have that as well. It's excellent. There's nobody that's too young to take homeopathic remedies. You can give them to 1-day-old babies. They're safe and very effective. My youngest client right now is 16 months old, but I started with him when he was 10 months old. And he's doing pretty well. And this is also a really good book for travel as well. Oops, let me just go back here for a second. So these are great books, and I highly advise if you want to get a home remedy kit. I can also advise you where to get a home remedy kit, and then you can have that and use that with any of these guides, any of these books. Many children that have been brought up on homeopathy, as Pratibha has said, in her family, they find that families that use a lot of homeopathy tend to not need a lot of the allopathic medicine. Cut down on the number of times that you're prescribed antibiotics, for example. I mean, wouldn't that be cool? Okay. Obviously, there's a place for Western medicine, as Pratibha said. This is not exclusive. We work together. In fact, I work with a doctor in Colorado, an MD, and I've been working with her for 6 years. She uses homeopathy and in conjunction to the regular medicine that she practices, and it's great. It's a good combination. And if you are inclined to go a little deeper, Homeopathy Beyond Flat Earth Medicine is actually available for free as an ebook. So you can just look online and it's 100 pages, and it's written for people that have never experienced homeopathy before. He's actually an MD. This guy is a very interesting guy. The guy who wrote the book, Dr. Dooley, he became a naturopathic doctor, went to naturopathy school, studied homeopathy, and then thought, I wonder what it would be like to go to medical school. So he ended up earning a medical degree, worked in conventional medicine for a while, and thought, no, I don't really want to do this anymore, and then went back to becoming a homeopath. So he wrote this book for his clients, for his patients, because he wanted them to understand a little bit about homeopathy before he prescribed the remedies to him. So Beyond Flat Earth Medicine, I think, is a great book to have. And The Impossible Cure, very famous book. Amy Lansky, software engineer out in California, at the time her son was 3, diagnosed with autism, took him to a homeopath, was able to cure him. He was young enough, and he just did really well. So she dropped her job as a professor of engineering at Stanford and became a homeopath, and then wrote this book, The Impossible Cure. And then Ritalin-Free Kids, also very good book. This is a couple. They are a naturopathic couple out in Washington State, and they are, especially the wife, Judith Ullman, has many, many years practice working in psychiatric settings. So their books come from firsthand experience of treating kids homeopathically rather than resort to the drugs right away. So these are really good resources. And then, of course, the online resources, the National Center of Homeopathy, lots of free information, lots of nice videos. You know, you can sign up for courses. They have special webinars for moms and lots of good information for sure. And they have a magazine they put out every month as well. So if you have any questions, you can contact me, you can email me, feel free to reach out. And that's where we are. Oh, I can't hear you, Pratibha. There you are.
Do you want to stop sharing?
Yeah,
Isabel?
I can do that. Let's see. Stop share. Let's see. I think I can do that.
All right. Well, thank you so much. This was a
You're welcome.
quick introductory presentation. And as I said in the beginning, I'm a direct beneficiary of homeopathy growing up. My mother was a homeopath, so I have seen, all kinds of age groups coming and, infants crying with ear pain, which is very common in India. And
Yes.
my mom dropping 2 drops or like one
Yes.
drop in the mouth, and the baby so relaxed going to sleep in front of my eyes. So, and I myself,
I'm glad you brought that up, Pratibha, because I was just thinking when homeopathy you mentioned this too, it started in Germany and then it spread all throughout Europe. So how did it get to India? It got to India by way of by the way of the UK, right? By the way of the British. So the British, when they colonized India, ended up taking homeopathy with them, and India is the place where most of the high class research is taking place now.
That's lovely.
Because the government recognizes the value. And I find that so interesting is that most of the good research is coming from India. The cancer research, all these amazing things with the nanoparticles. I mean, it's so amazing. And Germany, France as well. Homeopathy almost died in this country up until around 1960, and then it was revitalized.
Wow, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
Australia also, I think homeopathy is
Yes.
pretty well used. And in India, you're absolutely right. It's actually, I would actually request Pooja, Olina, if you want to come on video and unmute
Yes.
yourself.
Please.
Comment, question, please, you're welcome.
Please do. Hello.
Hello, and I am just a little jet lagged, so I might look a little sleepy. I just came back from India yesterday, actually.
Oh,
Made it
welcome,
to
welcome, Pooja.
Thank you, thank you. Yes, and I think I missed the initial part of the talk. I just didn't remember the timing. But thank you so much for sharing. I have been using homeopathy. Like, me and my family are just so trustful of homeopathy. I can't tell you. I treat myself, my kids, my parents, like we all believe in homeopathy, and of course supplement with either Ayurveda or allopathy as needed. But I think we survive on homeopathy is how I would say. That's the kind of people who trust in homeopathy.
Yeah.
Couple of things I would want to ask you, Isabel, is that a lot of times, like, at least here, we don't find good homeopaths. So we tend to read through internet, and this is first time, like, at least you're recommending some books, which I will definitely find out and refer. But the main struggle is on Google. There is so much. So I don't know what is trustworthy and reliable. So that's where I struggle on what source to go for when, I'm administering or wanting to read through symptoms, personality, and give through. That's one. And second, certain things are addressed via combination, which me as a layman, I find it very difficult and have to go through my gut Of course, I know my family members, so I use my gut, and knowledge from past or the reading that I do. So how do you think for people like us who are so much like, users of homeopathy can utilize right resources for self-treatment?
Really good questions, and welcome
Thank you.
back to the crazy land over here. Yeah, some really good questions. So in terms of practitioners, I'd be happy to help you out, figure that out, because I am part of different types of practitioners groups. So Prativa knows one person in my practitioners group, Juma, for example, and there are 8 of us in one group, and then
Isabel?
Did we?
medical homeopath. There
Okay,
is a medical homeopath.
you froze in between. Just the last couple lines
Okay.
if you want.
So let's say, for example, somebody comes to me and says, I want to do homeopathy, but I don't feel comfortable working with a lay homeopath. And I would say, oh, there's somebody in my group who has experience of being a nurse for 40 years, and she's a homeopath. She might be a good match for you. So you can contact me, not necessarily to work with me. I'd be happy to refer you,
Okay.
because any of us in the group would be a good referral resource. And so I'd be happy to do that, depending on, what kind of homeopath you're looking for. For example, there's somebody in my group who kind of specializes in what we call homeoprophylaxis. So people that are looking for alternatives to childhood vaccinations, let's say, and she
Okay.
kind of specializes in that. And so some of us, even though we're called homeopaths, we do specialize. Some of us specialize in different areas. Right now, I am part of a training where we're learning how to work with people that have had many doses of allopathic medicines over the years. So people tend to come to me now, let's say, that are suffering because of adverse effects of birth control pills or antibiotics or even childhood vaccinations. And so we have protocols to take people through that. So it all depends on kind of what you're looking for. We have homeopaths that are also osteopaths or have been physical therapists. So maybe you're looking for somebody that has that experience. So
That's interesting to know, because I was not aware of this kind of like, supporting branches. So I think that's really good to hear, and I surely will get in touch.
yeah, for sure.
And I think the struggle also we have, like, like someone in family who's been on allopath for, say, blood pressure and cholesterol, and is now trying homeopathy. So like, do we continue both till we see the results? So, these are the kind of questions we struggle with. So I'm sure with the resources and like knowing you, I'm sure to, get the right.
Yeah, those are such good questions, because first of all, as a lay homeopath, ethically, legally, we are never allowed to tell anybody to get off of their medication. If you are if you're a homeopathic MD, that's a totally different story. So, for example, the doctor that I work with in Colorado, recently she sent somebody to me who she's diabetic and on a lot of different types of blood thinners and everything. And so I put together a protocol to help her go down in the dosing. But I write in the email, when and if the doctor says it's okay. I'm not saying it's okay. This could help her, even alleviate the symptoms. Even if she stays on the medication, you're still going to get better in some way. But yeah, as a layperson, I would never tell a person to stop taking it.
Absolutely agreeable. Another question I had was like, why do homeopaths, at least in India, they never disclose their combination of medicines? Luckily, we have the kits now, so I read the book and do it, and have access to homeopathic shops, so I can source it. But
Right.
I don't know why. What is the philosophy behind not disclosing, the combinations?
Oh, you ask such good questions. I love your questions. It's kind of funny. I don't think most homeopaths do that anymore. I think that was the practice probably before the time that I started studying homeopathy. And yeah, I find I just write the remedy down. And look, people are going to look things up, and sometimes people come to me and say, why did you prescribe that? I'm not that nasty person that's described on the internet. And I said, well, look, they're just putting out some, some rough ideas, but the sources that I use are not available on the internet. So trust me, this is okay. But yeah, people are going to look up what they're going to look up for sure.
That's good to know,
Yeah.
because I always struggle. Like, I found only one homeopath who actually cured my daughter for her respiratory issues. He was elderly and
Nice.
he's no more, unfortunately, but he just saved my daughter and made her life
Oh,
by
that's
giving
so
us all the
beautiful.
combinations.
So was it a combination of different remedies at the same time or different? Ah, interesting.
But like she had respiratory and asthma things, and like a lot of combinations we tried, and some things worked in some situations. So now I know, like how to go about. Of course, if it's severe, I have to go to see her doctor. But then yes, it does help to know the details.
That's very interesting. Yeah, and there are some situations, for example, let's say somebody is trying to get to clear the effects of birth control. Okay, so they could take the birth control remedy and then another part of the day take another remedy, which we call an organ remedy, to support the liver. So we can do different things even on the same day, depending on, again, it's all very individual too,
Yes,
and
yeah,
it
that's what
depends
he
on the
tried.
person. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's beautiful though.
I think I'll also like to add to that, integrative is one good option to have, and really the better option, because you have an MD on board, you're collaborating. Because even though blood pressure medication might, they might feel better in other ways, but you don't want the numbers going down drastically
Right,
either.
right,
So that's
right.
important. But also, the combination of remedies in India, just like Isabel said, that that's a common thing. That's a like a very understandable thing, that people don't want you going and buying OTC. And just like you asked Pooja that what are some of the ways to kind of be able to do this by oneself. But I would say that when we go to construct a house, we try not to do most of the things ourselves.
Correct,
we we
absolutely.
have
Yeah,
we have a civil engineer, we have so many. So
right,
people have a training for a purpose. So
absolutely.
there is at the same time, I would say, bedside remedies and whatnot. So many books are there in homeopathy. But yeah, if you have an active medical issue going on, I think you understand this, but I'm just kind of probably reiterating the obvious, is that if you have like a common cold or a cough, you can try some what you think is going to work. But again, if you have something chronic or something more severe, it's better to get the expert advice. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's where like Isabel has shared her email ID, and she has like it's a learning for me, like what kind of branches and supporting homeopath experts are there. So I think that's wonderful to know, and I'll surely leverage those.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. And we also, many of the, I mean, because we are in so many groups together, we support each other. So we bounce the ideas. I mean, doctors do that too, right? They go to their colleagues, they go to the person in the next office, and they try to get some input, because having a bunch of brains together is much more effective than probably just one person on their own. So it's very
Absolutely.
collaborative. We work very collaboratively.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've asked Isabel to bring more homeopathic colleagues into the groups, because, as you can see, Isabel, there is definitely a lot of interest, especially for Indians. Homeopathy is quite familiar, almost as familiar as Ayurveda.
Yes.
In fact, there are some cities where homeopathy is the main, method of
Go to thing. Yep.
treatment,
Yeah.
like in Calcutta. Calcutta is like fully on homeopathy. So please to bring in more colleagues. That will be awesome. And Pooja, you're joining from North Carolina, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Charlotte. Yep.
So
Oh,
so we
nice.
so we have people from all over the state, and if you have people from in your group who are in that particular state, that also can be helpful. But yeah, in general, it will be great to have more homeopaths joining Holistic Health Alliance, which, by the way, her son and their group of youth have developed a holistic app for Holistic Health Alliance.
Nice.
I'll be sending you also for beta testing. So
Oh,
very,
nice.
very soon.
Yeah, and I
We're
must also say, Pratibha, Jane, Isabel, like, with me, when I was in Minneapolis, so I moved from Minneapolis to here, I was able to influence and inspire so many of my friends to go for homeopath. And they used to come to me because, I have the medicine, like, mini medicine store
I
inside my
love
home.
it. That's
I love it.
so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. And
That's
I'm also so used to, like, I mean, over a period of time, I'm totally on Ayurveda, which makes sense, right? Because that's what I do. But, initially when I came, I had got my own kit, Belladonna and
Yeah.
Brushstrops and Nuxworm and, biochemic, Calcarea, Phos and Ferrum Phos and all those things. So
uh-huh,
over a
uh-huh.
period of time, I mean, you don't need, like, when you wash your laundry, ultimately you end up picking one detergent, right?
Right, right,
You
right.
don't get all the detergents in the market. So anyway, so I'm on Ayurveda, but I'm a big fan of homeopathy, and it works great with kids, sweet goblets,
Pills, yeah.
They like
that's
Yeah.
those
it.
little white balls for
No
sure.
challenge at all for giving to the kids.
And it's so nice that even my daughter, I can ask her to pick book, and she knows, like, what to read, how to read. Oh, this is the bottle, so it's so easy.
Yeah, and it's very personalized, like so many other holistic modalities. It's what Isabel is saying, like person to person. I know we have constitutions, right,
Hmm.
Isabel?
We
We have,
do. And
yeah,
and I'm just thinking about animals too, because there's a
yeah,
whole field of homeopathy now for animals that
yes,
it's
yes.
just my daughter had a dog who was portraying very, I mean, it was kind of scary neurological symptoms. He was shaking, his head was shaking. Took him to a homeopath, tweaked the diet, started giving him some remedies, hardly ever sees the symptoms anymore.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
it's amazing. It's
I mean,
amazing.
they're dogs. They can't, you can't put a placebo on a dog and a baby,
Yeah, that's a good point.
right?
Yes, 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 yes.
So,
That's true.
yeah.
What is a placebo? If your outcome is achieved, it's
Exactly.
a medicine. It's not a placebo. If your pain is gone, it's
Exactly.
gone.
Exactly.
So, anyway, so thank you, Isabel.
Thank
Pooja, any
you.
more questions? Thank you for joining it. This was
No, I
Yes.
nice.
think this was very helpful, and I'm glad that I connected. So I will come back with questions. I'm sure I will have.
And you have her
Thank
email.
you.
In any case, you know how to reach me,
Yes,
then I can
yes,
connect you.
yes, yes. No,
That's
thank you
great.
for
And I
organizing
will,
this.
this is
Isabel,
Yeah, she should be.
connection is a little bit, but yeah, thank you. And I think Pooja, you coming on the evening call or no?
Today,
Okay, you
I don't know
doubt
what
it,
time it
right?
is,
I
but
think
like
you're going to
I'm like,
crash. Yeah, yeah, go crash. I'm glad you're back from India. That must have
yeah,
been
thank
very,
you. Yeah, yeah.
very
It
tense,
was
I'm
very
sure.
exhausting, very, very exhausting.
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, you guys
Well,
have a great rest of your Sunday, and
thank you. You
thank you
too.
for joining. And
Thank you.
Isabel, we look forward to having you more and more in our
Sounds
community.
good. I'm going to raise it at our next meeting, see if I can get more people to join.
That'll be lovely. And I'll share the YouTube video. Anybody who's watching the live, this will be available on our YouTube channel within 24 hours or so.
That sounds
Okay,
great.
take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye
Bye.
bye.